I'm April Lovett.
And I'm Daryl Lovett.
And this is Success in Black and White,
The podcast,
where our mission is to bridge the gap between racial boundaries.
Hey everybody, we are back for another episode of Success in Black and White, the podcast. And we have a very special guest for you. So April is going to read you the bio, and then we will jump right into this episode.
That's right. All right. So Kiama Anthony Bishop is the Assistant University Registrar for Policy and Compliance at the University of Virginia, where she's been employed since 2015. She has worked with military students in the higher education setting since 2011. She coordinates the submission of certifications for military educational benefits, tuition assistance, and other programs. Kiama also manages collaborating with the Provost Office and UVA's 11 schools to develop and improve academic administrative policies at UVA. She also represents UVA on the SCHEV, I have no idea what that stands for, Military Education Advisory Committee, but it sounds really important, and as a member of the university's Inclusive Excellence Committee. She is committed to inclusive and equitable policies and practices and has a passion for dismantling systemic racism in higher education. Kiama is also the Vice President of the Virginia Association of School Certifying Officials. She's a first-generation college student with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and a Master of Public Administration. She is completing doctoral studies in the Doctor of Education and Leadership program at Virginia Commonwealth University. Kiama resides with her husband, Justin, in Central Virginia. I'm excited to have this guest. Kiama is a friend of mine and a mentor of mine, and today we're going to be talking about microaggressions and how to combat them, both in person and now virtually.
Get yourself together.
I'm
All right, this is going to be a good episode. I can feel it. I can feel it.
I'm like sitting here trying to figure out, like, all right, I need to make sure I stay quiet right now.
You're all good.
You good. All right, here we go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Success in Black and White,
the podcast. We are back one more again. We are back
coming to you live
from the house. Yes.
And we are not alone, not in our house, but we're not alone on our podcast today. We have a guest with us coming to us all the way from Virginia.
Ooh.
I'm really excited about this one because this girl, to me, she is such a good friend. It's so funny because we've never met in person, but I feel like that's just the times of COVID. But she is such a good friend. She has been a mentor, whether she realizes it or not. She has mentored me. And I am excited because some of the first things that her and I talked about, we are going to bring to this audience today. And I'm really excited about it because she has a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I can't wait. I'm excited. I can't even talk. I'm so excited.
I'm excited for you. I know y'all be having y'all little conversations going on and stuff. I be walking in the room and they be having little conversations going on. And I just be like, oh, okay. And walk back out. I'm like, I already know who it is. I'm walk back out. So
I love it.
All right, well, go ahead and jump us off then.
Well, cool. Okay, so y'all have already heard, but this is Kiama, and Kiama is the assistant. Oh, you are going to have to help me, but you are the Assistant University Registrar for University of Virginia, and you do have like a specialty in that, which I am not going to lie, I didn't even know existed. So you kind of have a specialty, and our audience heard that already, but you are also you're on your way to become a doctor, which is so cool. And I think you're almost done, right? Like you're so close.
I'm almost halfway there.
I love it.
It feels so far. It's really not, but
it's not.
I'm trying to get there.
You got this. We're rooting for you.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
I appreciate the good vibes.
Yes, vibes your way. But you are going to be a doctor in higher education leadership.
A doctor of leadership at Virginia Commonwealth University. So yeah, we're focusing on, I'm in the higher education track. And so we're focusing on higher education because that's where I live right now. And that's where my passion is at. And where I feel like we need more people that look like us in leadership positions in higher education. So that's what I'm doing right now.
I love it.
Awesome. So let's do this for the people. Why don't you give your own introduction and tell them a little bit about you, and who you are and kind of what put you on the path that you're on right now.
All right, we're just gonna jump right in, right? Hi, everyone. Well, I am Kiama Anthony Bishop. As my good girlfriend here said, I am Assistant University Registrar for Policy and Compliance at the University of Virginia. I feel like my title is really straightforward. I deal with policy and compliance in the registrar's office. Kind of, how I got here is really tied to my own personal story and my own lived experience. So I'm a first generation college student for my entire family. And I come from a single mother, single parent household. And one thing that I can say is that my mom pushed me, and education has always been something that was very important to her. It was something that she knew I was going to be able to use to be successful. And there were times when I was like, all right, Mom, you're pushing me a little too hard. But in hindsight, she really was not, right? I was just, being a jerk in my younger years, my teenage and my college years. And so taking that into my undergraduate experience, I'm a first generation college student in Central Virginia at a predominantly white institution, right? And so, we arrive, and I remember clearly one of the first headlines of our school paper, our first week we were there was, this institution welcomes its class of 25 Blacks. And that was this big thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, where did I get to? And so, don't get me wrong, that experience, it absolutely shaped, what I'm doing now. I ended up being the president of the Black Student Association. I worked with the undergraduate admissions office. I did a number of things in terms of club organizations and stuff like that. But I realized as I was going through those experiences and looking back that, my experience is so different from the majority of the people that are on the same campus as me. And so, fast forwarding to now and, what my role is now, I really feel like I can bring that energy to my work. When we're talking about policy and compliance, literally how we tell people to exist on these campuses impacts their experiences. And I think that's really where my passion lies is, we have minoritized groups, we have people that look like me, we have people that don't look like me that are in other minoritized populations that really are having a hard time because of systemic racism and the oppressive systems and, policies that we have. So, obviously that's the passion of mine, but that's how I got here. And that's why I continue to do what I do and why I do it at a predominantly white institution now.
I do want to say that one of the things that you have taught me, I never knew before this. I think that I was consistently, when we were talking about some of the experiences I was having or that I was trying to convey or trying to write about, I would say the term underrepresented. And you were the one who was like, let's use a different term. You were very nice and very PC about it. You're like, let's use a different term, underrepresented. Let's not use that. It's minoritized, racially minoritized, maybe gender minoritized, but let's not use underrepresented. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Literally, flipped a switch that day. I stopped using that terminology. And I wanted to draw attention to that because you said that. And I think that it's still so prevalent for people to use the term underrepresented when speaking about specific minoritized populations. I know we're a little bit out of question order.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions, but
I'm going with the flow with you all.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
Tell our audience, give us some insight, because I do consider you like you're my mentor and you're one of the experts on this. And so tell us a little bit about why people should be very careful with their language in terms of using terms like minoritized versus underrepresented.
Yeah, so underrepresented and underserved are two terms that are kind of like buzzwords, right? We fall on them a little too much historically. And so we use those, and it creates a different stigma for those students, right? It's clear that they are underserved and underrepresented, but we've continued to underserve and underrepresent them in a manner that it really doesn't make sense to keep using those terms when we should be talking about racially minoritized groups or minoritized populations in general, right? We're talking about the minority versus the majority. And let's be clear, the majority is a lot larger than the minority, right? And so we really kind of do a disservice when we continue to use those terms. It's also like, using the term diversity. And I know diversity is kind of a hot topic right now in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we're talking about diversity, why don't we take it a step further and talk about representation, talk about equity, talk about those things. And so that's really where we kind of came with that. And so, when we're looking at how we can create equitable and inclusive campuses and environments, those are words that just don't create that type of environment for students. But even like when we're talking about each other, I can say, Janie over here is an underserved group and she's a staff member, and we're doing the same thing. Like we're creating this kind of barrier. We're putting this additional identity on these folks that already are dealing with systemic oppression and systemic racism. And so I'm about, and I will be clear, I was guilty of using that for years. And it wasn't until I started really delving into this area and doing more research and realizing the impact of my words, even as a Black woman, that I started to say like, oh, okay, we need to change this. It's just like, for example, to put it in simple terms of, a person who has a disability and just saying, oh, disabled person, not defining them by a specific disability or a specific characteristic, but let's acknowledge who we are as people, right? And so that's really where that came from. I remember that conversation now that you brought that up. Like I was like, oh, okay, that stuck with her. But yeah, that's where that comes from, right?
You know what? I was listening to you explain that, and I was just kind of sitting here and I was like, that's almost like a double whammy. Like when you say that, it's almost like, because like you obviously can't take away them being a part of a minoritized population, but then you hit them with the unrepresented. And I was just thinking, I was like, you can still make small steps towards finding representation. But even if you do that, there's still going to be a minoritized, group, part
Absolutely.
of the minoritized group. And I was just like, wow, that's a double whammy. They're unrepresented and they're part of the minoritized group. And one, you can make adjustments and make small steps towards, fixing, but the other one you can't change. So once you just classify them as the one and you make minor adjustments to find representation, it's kind of like a clean slate, but it's not really a clean slate though.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, representation matters, right? And so when we're talking about diversity, it's so whitewashed, right? Because what are we being diverse from, right? What are we trying to represent? So it's really the majority trying to bring in other groups, bring in those minoritized populations to create a diverse atmosphere. At the end of the day, a person is not diverse. They are, minoritized group, they're minoritized. And so it's, I mean, there's so many layers to this, right? Like and it's crazy because, you know, there are so many layers to this in general, and then there are so many layers to this in higher education, right? And I feel like they go hand in hand, right?
My question is overrepresentation a thing?
I mean, I think so. I mean, it depends on like who are you talking about in terms of overrepresentation. I mean, are we talking about, you know, a board full of white men? Then that's overrepresentation. So I think you have them. It's just, you know, the context in which you put it in, right? You know, like, I think you can have overrepresentation, but in terms of like minoritized groups, and where we have come from historically, I don't think that you're going to have a point where you're going to have overrepresentation of minoritized populations. You may have tokenization where you are overusing someone from a minoritized group, but I don't think that we're ever going to get to a point where we can consider something overrepresentation for a racially or otherwise minoritized group.
See, you just open a door. I'm gonna let you have it back.
Oh, you said tokenism.
I was just like,
here we go.
Oh, we can talk about tokenization now.
Oh, and then I also feel like this with the minoritized groups. It's like you try to reach the representation that you feel is adequate for your organization, right? But then like once you start getting too many, it's kind of like, all right, y'all, like we got 4 of them in there now.
Right.
Like, we feeling good about these 4. Let's not push it too.
Let's not push the envelope. You know, it's funny because it ties back to you all's, you know, your episode about Black History Month. Like, all right, when we get into March, y'all had February. We in March now. Let's pull it back a little bit. So y'all got 4. You know, 5, or you need to do something else, right? So, and then I mean, but that's the nature of what you're dealing with. And there are really times when it's like, well, we don't have any, like, we just don't have any regular white folk that can do this, like, you know, something like that. Or, you know, is it becoming a little too diverse, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel you. So yeah, I mean, we can go down the road of tokenization if you want. And
yeah, he talked.
That might be a different day, right?
That might be a different.
Don't get me started.
We get started, we'll be here for 3 hours.
We are here for you tonight. We are here for you. But it does.
This will be mutually beneficial, okay?
Yeah, but it does exist, and the fact that you said that, you know, and for instance, you know, I've been a part of organizations, you know, not speaking on where I am now. Well, to an extent, I can a little bit, but just I've been a part of some other organizations that have stuck out a little bit more to where they're like, all right, we got a good one. Like, he's the face for this. You know, I work for an organization in a large city, and I found myself like going to all of the schools in certain areas and certain rural areas. And I was kind of like the face. I was the person for a specific group because they were like, we need more of these types of people to come participate in our programs. So before I knew it, I had a car and they were giving me gas stipends. And,
at least they paid you.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I was like, but at the same time, I was like, why are they sending me out to all these places? And then it started to make sense. Like, you know, I had my little shirt on with my little name tag in extra large letters. And I found myself going to like all the places, and they were just like, look, and I was speaking in front of them, and it was like you said, it was a tokenization, and it was a reason for it. They wanted people that looked like me to be more involved in the programs that was being provided. So they put me out there as the face. And obviously the way that they say, oh my gosh, you're so well spoken, the way you present yourself is so professional, and you know, and that's why they put me out there to do that. And I was just like, wait a minute, nobody else can't do this. I got to do this every single time.
Yeah, because you said that, we got to jump ahead a little bit because
I'm so glad that you were going, because I was going to go to April. So
like he's priming the pump already with like
is
so well spoken, because what we really want to talk about is microaggressions.
Yes.
People don't understand. Some people may understand. A lot of people, I would venture to say, don't understand what this means, what this term means, like what microaggressions are, how you would classify an action as a micro, or words, or even body language as a microaggression. And it happens. We had, I don't know how far back you went in our episodes, but I think like a year and a half ago, we did a 2-part episode on code switching. 3-part episode on code switching. And he was like brutally honest about his experiences with code switching. And so we talked about that, but I think that plays into the larger microaggressions. And so I'm just curious. I know I wrote something amazing here, but we've talked about microaggressions before. And I'm just curious, like from your standpoint, your experiences, your knowledge base, like tell our audience a little bit about what this means to you. If you don't mind sharing, if you've experienced them in some way that we could learn from, you'll have plenty to share. But just share if you don't mind. We want to educate.
Daryl's talking about this, and I'm like, so we're just gonna go straight to racial microaggressions. Like we're going straight there. Like tokenization and microaggressions go hand in hand. Like tokenization is a form of a racial microaggression, right? Derogatory comments and insults that, are cited, and people say things and they don't mean them that way, or, I didn't mean it like that, but you speak well, right? You sound intelligent. And it's like, my immediate response is, well, what else is a college educated person supposed to sound like? What else is an adult person supposed to sound like? But that is, and that is something, or the age old, you talk white, right? Like you sound white. And it's like, oh, okay. So because I sound like a white person, I sound more intelligent. Is that what you're saying to me? And people don't understand the impact of those things, right? Like, it's just things like that. Invisibility, isolation. Like, I can't tell you how many times I walk into a space now, and virtually even, and I'm the only person of color there, right? And so you show up and you're in these spaces, and it's 20 people on your screen, and you're literally like, all right, it's just me today, all right, gonna hold it down, all right, let me try to represent for my people. But then you go to say something, and then someone speaks over you, right? Someone, we can be talking about something that is directly impacting students of color, particularly first gen or Black students, and you go to say something and someone's like just talking straight over you, and it's like, all right, so I'm invisible. I'm not here. You all don't see me, and that's a microaggression, right? And then you have to be forceful, and like, I have to insert myself into the conversation. So then I have to deal with the angry Black woman syndrome, right? Like, oh, Kiama's angry. Like, she raised her voice. Let's hear what she has to say. When it's, no, you haven't given me a space to be visible in this entire time. So I've had to create this space myself by making you uncomfortable, right? Those are, they are things that people deal with all the time, racial microaggressions and microaggressions in general just show up all day, every day, right? I remember clearly where I had someone literally walk up and put their hand in my hair at work. It was like, how did you get your hair to look like that? And I just was like, as this hand is in my scalp, I was just like, is this really happening? And it's happened more than once. And people don't understand that is inappropriate. I would never walk up to anyone and touch them, right? Like, other than my husband. I'm not touching anybody. I'm not stroking your hair. I'm not patting you on the back. I'm not going to pat you on the head. Like, all of those things are just so inappropriate. And yes, these are all accurate accounts because I see your face, April. But yeah, I think I've gone down like a rabbit hole right now with that. But those are examples of my own lived experiences, right?
You know what? To be real, our daughter came home one day and told me that a kid in class, they're 5. Okay. And so I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this because she told me a kid in class touched her hair and she was like, yeah, they were playing with my hair. And I'm like, mama bear, like, don't touch my daughter.
Not.
Right. Like, don't touch her hair. Don't touch her. Don't. And I've told her before, like, don't let people touch your hair. Don't let them, because people are very fascinated by it. She has very curly, very beautiful hair, and they're fascinated by it. And they're 5, but see, this is where I'm like, the 2 people in my life who call me are like Daryl and Kiama. They'll call me out and be like, don't give white people passes. I can't tell you how many times you both have done this.
We'll play that.
And
those kids got parents.
Right. And it happens at an early age,
Yes.
So
and it becomes a learned behavior that as they get older,
right.
Well, nobody's called me on it. So now I'm a first year, I'm a freshman in college. And I think it's okay for me to treat my peers like this because I've been allowed to do this throughout my childhood because the people around me didn't tell me that is inappropriate behavior.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, in April, she knows that I love her. But one of the things that, like, I don't want our daughter to think is that it's okay, or she has to put up with it. And the difference between April and I is like, April is very, she had boundaries and she definitely will let you know when you cross them, but she's more like friendly. She's more of like the hugger and that person. And I'm like how you just kind of explain, like, if you touch me, I'm like, put them up, like, what's going on? Like, and it don't matter if it's, like you said, a pat on the back, because I'm just not really, I don't really like people in my space like that where, she is. But our daughter, I want her to understand that it's okay for her to create boundaries. And especially when it comes to the topic that we're talking about now, about her hair or her physical space. Because I feel like as she grows older, I feel like a lot of people are going to be intrigued by her hair because it is very beautiful. It's very curly. It is very long. And obviously she has, mixed texture hair. So I don't want her to even think that she has to let people touch it at all, 5 or not. I'm like, as soon as they reach for your hair, you give them the you give them the block,
Right.
So that's kind of where that is.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that's something that I think I had to, I'm glad that you are doing that at such a young age, Daryl, because that is something that I had to learn as life went on. Like, it was one of those, okay, do I make a big fuss about this right now? And then I have kind of that black sheep, like, it's me, I'm the worst, I'm the aggressor, or do I let that go? And in hindsight, I wish that I had, kind of set those boundaries initially. Now I'm at a point in my life where I'm just going to be unapologetically Black, right? This is who I am. I'm going to be this 365, right? Now we code switch, and I totally get that. We do that and we do it well, but I'm in a place now where I can't give out those passes anymore. I don't have any more cards to give you. And so I'm glad that you all are talking about that, because it's also not appropriate to ask her why her hair grows like that. Does it just grow like that? Is your hair just curly? Like, do you have to put product in it? Yes, this is my hair. It naturally grows like that. For those of you who want this, I wake up like this, right? My Black is beautiful. And so I'm glad you all are teaching her that now. That's the next, like, can I touch it? Does it look like that? Is this your real hair? How do you get these coils? How do you get these curls? Oh my gosh, it's so soft. And it's like, this human is not a pet and she is not on display. We have moved past that point of our history, right? She is not on the block. She is not up for display where you can examine her. And so I'm with you on that one. I'm a little unapologetic about that too. But you know, our girl April has a different approach sometimes.
Yeah, I
Her.
understand that. And plus, like I said, her personality, she is a social butterfly, and she is very much on that side of the spectrum, and I am completely on the opposite side.
We over here on the other side there.
Yeah.
But we recognize too that means because our daughter has my personality.
Yeah.
Our son has his personality.
Yeah.
But we also know that we have to start helping her set boundaries. Like he has to step in a lot of times because it's just my personality is so different.
Yeah.
So in order to protect her as a human, he'll have to step in and be like, this is what you say, this is what you do. Like mommy's very nice.
She's a lot darker too, though, Kiama. Like she's a lot darker than April is. I'm like, she's not gonna get that pass that April from either side. You know, she's not gonna get that pass. So you know, trying to make her aware, but doing it in a child appropriate way.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that because I'm just like, like back up, get up off me.
Right. And then you have to remember that you're dealing with a 5-year-old. And that's a great point, right? You're dealing with colorism on both sides, right? On one side, you're too dark. And on the other side, there are repercussions and consequences because you're too light, right? And so she's having those different identities, and which one is most salient at any time is going to determine how she's going to respond in any given situation. And that's, you know, it's going to be something to navigate, especially at such a young age. I mean, it's so disappointing that at 5 years old, you're already dealing with it.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad because you can start to teach her how to set boundaries at such a young age. But on the other hand, she's 5. Like, why can't she just show up to school like everybody else does and expect to have the same lived experiences that everybody else does in 2021, right?
Yeah. Those conversations start early though, because I remember when she came home, when she was like 4.
Yeah,
and early fours, and she was telling us about the conversations that were going on in class and how her friends were saying that she was brown. Like they're having those conversations already, and I'm like, this is happening at home for a kid to bring that and talk about it at school,
right?
Brown people, and you know, so
and I mean, we're like you, we live in the South, so I'm sure there are interesting conversations that happen.
Absolutely.
So here's my question for you, since we're talking about the microaggressions, and I'll give a story, and I've probably said it before in a previous episode, but a microaggression that happened for me in my current, like at my current institution, being in a leadership position. I had a gentleman, and he was white, and he'd come in. He was having some issues and challenges with getting to the facility and his access control and all of that. So he came in and he was asking the students at the front for some assistance. And then he proceeded to say, well, I'm sorry, I need to speak to a supervisor. So then obviously there are a couple of tiers before it gets to me. So he worked his way all the way to me, and he asked, you know, one of the people who oversees the facilities, and they handle all of these issues. He was like, hey, I want to speak to the person who's in charge. And they were like, okay, well, this is my boss. So they brought him to my office, right? So I'm sitting in my office and I'm just working, and they knock on the door. I was like, hey, Daryl, we know you don't like to be interrupted in this manner. But this gentleman is really adamant about speaking to you, right? So the man came in and he was like, I'm looking for the person that's in charge. And I was like, so that would be me. I oversee all operations of this facility and programs. And he was like, no, I mean the real person that's in charge. He said this to me in my office. He said, no, I want to talk to the real person in charge. And I said, okay, let's try this again, sir. You're talking to him. That's myself. It's only one step higher than me. And if you want to speak to that person, you definitely can. So he just started to, you know, just like, well, I don't know what's going on. I thought I was going to be talking to the person who's really in charge, but since I got to talk to you, this is what's going on. Yes.
I wish I was a fly on the wall.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
I was on the inside, like my heart was just doing backflips in there.
Oh my God.
I was just like, D, just like bring it down. He said, since I got to talk to you, and I would prefer to be talking to the real person in charge. But he kept saying the real person that's in charge. And I was just like, so for some reason, he felt like I can't be that real person that's in charge. And I definitely know it had to do with what I looked like. Because when he walked in, when they brought him into the office and they started explaining to me, and he was standing right there, and then he was just like, no, this can't be it. Like he can't be that person. He can't be in charge. Because he had already talked to like 3 or 4 people. So he probably thought it was a game. He was like, they just going around passing me off to all their peers.
Everybody just pretending to be in charge right now.
So, but yeah, that happened to me at my current institution. And, obviously I worked with him and tried to help him address his problems, and we ended up getting it resolved. And obviously the most challenging part for me was that even though we resolved it, like he never, like, I feel like he was still thinking like, wait a minute, what? Even though we corrected the problem, we got him situated to where his access was working and he could do whatever he needed to. I feel like he just kind of overlooked all of that and was still trying to figure out how I was in charge.
He came away from that like, wait, did that all really just happen? Is this real? Like he felt like he was on pranked, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh man.
Yeah. So that and I deal with microaggressions all the time.
All the time.
Can I ask both y'all something? Because I want to know, we're in the age, obviously in the middle of a pandemic, and so we are in the age of virtual, right? Everything is virtual. Most people are working from home. And so they're interacting with colleagues in a virtual environment, much like we're on right now. So have you also, Kiama, you told us a little bit, but have you also experienced microaggressions via Zoom, like in a remote environment? And what does that look like? How is that different or the same or?
Yeah, I'll jump in and then I'll let you. So I've experienced it, and it's so easy to be overlooked or to be passed up in the Zoom. But the way that I've experienced it a couple times, like, oh, hold on, we're gonna give you a second to talk, like brush offs. I've gotten that a couple of times. I've gotten the talk over, obviously, and when they interrupt you and in between the transition, it's like a delay. So it's like they kind of pause to see if you still have more, but don't really pause. And they just keep talking. That happens sometimes. So it does happen. Like I said, over Zoom, it's easy to kind of overlook it or pass it up because you do have the technology pieces and you have the minor delays. And the different things like that. But yeah, it happens.
Okay.
It happens. It definitely happens. And the impact is just as significant as if you were in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feels the same when someone talks over you, and maybe even worse virtually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like there's a Zoom culture where we know there's some type of lag and some type of delay. But like Daryl said, people will give you like that half a second. Oh, no, you're not really going to say anything significant. So let me keep on with my point, right? And it's hard. It's hard. Like I said, I show up to so many virtual environments and am the only person of color, right? And it is difficult because everybody would just be tagging each other in the conversation and going back and forth, and you go to say something and somebody else talks over you, or you say something and it's like, okay, she said that, but then John Smith two comments down says the exact same thing, and now it's rocket science, right? Like, okay, did y'all miss when I literally said the sky was blue today? Oh, you were just waiting for someone else to say it. Like, it's difficult. And like, I've had instances since last March of, showing up and, people see my name and I always get the, is your name Kiama? Is it, is it Kiami? It's all these things. And, I say, oh, my name is Kiama. if that's really difficult for you, you can call me Kay, right? Like if it's that hard. And then, it's, oh, so where are you from? Since we're waiting for your colleagues to show up, where are you from? Virginia. I live in Central Virginia, like right outside of Charlottesville. What are we doing? Oh, okay. Oh, that's such a unique name. I love that. It's beautiful. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm thankful that my mama named me Kiama, right? I own that proudly, but it's not that special. Like, we don't need to have a whole conversation about how beautiful and how unique my name is. Like, I know that we're not gonna find that in the store on the keychain anywhere. I get it's unique. I don't need you to point out the obvious, right? Thank you, Captain Obvious. But I'm with Daryl. I mean, it shows up just as much in virtual spaces. And I think in Zoom and in Teams and in virtual spaces, sometimes it's easier to pick up on, right? Because you can sometimes sit back and kind of watch things play out, right? Like you can see things transpiring, and you can kind of see like a buildup of something, and you're going to say like, okay, here we go. We're going to go down this road again. These three people right here are going to be talking, and they're going to overpower everything, and I'm going to have to figure out how to insert myself, right? Or, I have to rely on my white allies, like my supervisor or colleagues that I have in other units, to create spaces for me and to kind of open the door for me. And that's so inappropriate and so unnecessary, but it's needed, because otherwise, like, I literally have had to have people that are like, hey, Kiama's trying to make a point right now. Can we stop this conversation so that we can hear what her point is? And I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate that, right? And it's hard. It's very noticeable in virtual environments, in Zoom, in emails, where you send someone and it's I've gotten to the point where I just you're just going to get my full title when I respond now, because you see the name Kiama and you automatically assume that I do not know what I'm talking about, but I send the same response and put a title on it. Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, so that's all I needed to do. Good to know.
See, they can't let me in none of the meetings with you. If they start clowning like that, I'll be like, so y'all sitting around, what y'all waiting for? Kiki, do you love me? Are you riding? What? I'll be
right,
man. But what you said about I know I was joking, but in all seriousness, what you said about the queuing and the Zoom and the virtual, it does give you, I feel like, an advantage. For me, it does, on the opposite side. And I've started, people know my face, like I can play it really close, but I also intentionally make my face do certain things, and I've learned how to use it to my advantage. So now when we're virtual, and I'll lean in and I'll just, and people pick up on that, and they'll be like, okay, like, we got to let them say something. And I know now, after trying it a couple of times, that can cue me up. So if people are cutting me off and they're not giving me a chance, I'll kind of give them like one of these and just be like, and they're like, okay, like, we have to, cue in, or I'll get in that chat box and say, hey, when you all are done, just leave me space at the end to say what I need to say.
Oh my gosh.
What? And you want to talk about people get uncomfortable? Oh my goodness.
They stop.
Like, they get so uncomfortable, and they're just like, oh my gosh, like, because that's one of the things that I've experienced, just in general. Like, people are like, they are afraid of the confrontation. Like you said earlier, when you're like authentic to who you are, and you're not hiding your Blackness, like, people get uncomfortable real quick, and they don't like that uncomfortability. And then they're just like, let's just go ahead and give them room to say what he need to say, because we don't want to go there.
Right.
So I do know that
I don't want to rock the boat too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's so, I'm so, like, I feel like we are like related in another life, right? Because in, like, everybody knows, and I'm just to the point now where I really don't hide it as much as I used to initially, like, on my face is going to tell what mood I'm in and everything in the first place. But I've just gotten to the point where now it's a tool and I use it. I mean, I will just stare you down and wait it out. And, you know, you'll know like, oh, okay. I've had people chat me and say like, you know, like when I have been in a meeting where I've had a Black colleague, I've had a colleague write me and say, Kiama, fix your face. And I will write back, nope, not doing it right now. This is what you're going to get. Right. And I'm not going to apologize for that, because I don't feel like I should have to go to that extent for you to at least acknowledge my presence and value me being in here with you. I'm here for a reason.
Yes. And they acknowledge it. And I do like a point that you said, and I want to make sure that I definitely speak on it, because it does make a difference and it does help that ally, because I do have some. I have a lot of those.
Yes.
And sometimes they'll ask me, like you said, on the side, they're like, you look like you have something to say. And they'll kind of cue me in the background.
Yes.
They'll say, you like you have something to say. And I'll tell you something. Well, I don't want to put the person out there, but we have somebody that's in a high position that I know really well, and I feel like they're an ally for me. And they do that quite often. They'll be like, you have something to say. Or they'll say, you usually have something around this topic area that you and I talk about on the side. Like, I want you to speak on that. And this will be happening like behind the scenes, and they'll kind of just cue me in. So that ally part, I think is very important, and appreciating those people and, using them as allies. And sometimes I don't even wait for them to come at me. I'll just hit them up in the side chat and be like, hey, I got some things that I think will help on this, topic area. Just whenever you're ready, let me know. And I'll know that there's somebody that can shut the meeting down whenever they're ready.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I appreciate the allies who recognize their privilege, and can in turn use that power and privilege and authority way that creates a space for me. Because it's so crazy that you say that, because I have a couple allies and the same thing happens where it's like, this is like an area that Kiama works in. Like, let's loop her in. Or, hey, Kiama, we going down this hole here. What are your thoughts? Like, or I've literally had an ally who has halted a conversation and said, yo, Kiama needs to make a point right now, right? And those things are so powerful, because those are the opportunities where we get our seats at the table, right? Going down we're all over the place tonight, but going down a different road, we have to work so much harder to prove ourselves, right? And so I already feel like I feel slighted, because I feel like I earned my place here in this discussion, but yet you're not acknowledging it. And so my colleague here, my ally, is going to come through and create that space, right? But it's so powerful, because it's just a reminder that I got to work a whole lot harder than my white colleague who's at a similar level at me, that can get away with certain things that I just can't get away with, right? There are things that they can do that I can't do. We struck another one, right?
We obviously have these conversations at home.
Clearly.
But yes, these are conversations.
I'm not going to follow up on this, but I feel you. I feel you.
We do talk about this often.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is, and from my vantage point of being the white person, so part of the majority in the room, is that I see it too. There are things that I know I could get away with that I do not believe that any of my other racially minoritized equals in that same space could get away with.
Right.
And it's just part of, I don't know if it's part of the culture. And, Kiama, we have kind of talked about that. You've actually helped walk me through this in writing before. So I don't know if it's part of the culture of being at a PWI. I don't know if it's part of the culture of being at a place that the policies are very white centric, yet everybody sees them as quote unquote neutral. I don't know if it's part of the culture of being in the South. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's a combination of all three. But, I can see this clearly, and we talk about it often because it happens to him often, you know?
Yeah. It goes back to a point that you were talking about earlier when you were talking about aggression, that, the angry Black woman, aggression versus passion. And I have that conversation a lot. And even with students sometimes about the aggression versus passion. Whereas if it comes from a certain person, that may be because they look a certain way, or it could be because of past, history. But it's that, they're passionate about what they're doing, or if it comes from someone else, it's aggression. So I always find myself like on the seesaw of that, is to like, I want people to know that I am passionate about the work that I do, but also how can I do that in a way that it's not perceived as aggression when it comes out or when it shows.
Right, right. I'm with you on that one. I mean, that, and it's a fine line, right? Because one wrong tone, one wrong body language mannerism, one wrong word can tip that scale so easily of, oh, Daryl's just angry. He's confrontational. He's on one today. When really it's, no, I'm passionate about this. You should be passionate about this as well, because it's equitable and it's the right thing to do. But I want you to know how passionate I am about this and what type of energy I'm going to bring to this work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because historically, this is how we're perceived, we don't get to show up into those spaces, right? Like, I have literally sat in meetings, especially in Zoom, right? Virtually, where I've seen people who don't look like me literally yelling in the screen like this. I mean, just going off. And yet the minute like I try to even insert myself, everybody's looking at me like I just gave everybody the middle finger. And it's like, you literally had two people that were just yelling at each other in their screens, and nobody's calling that out. But because I have some passion about what we're actually trying to accomplish, the reaction is completely different. Like, the standard is so different for us, right? We have to meet a different level of professionalism. We have to code switch a whole lot more. I mean, it's everywhere. Like, April, to your question, I think it's all of those things. I think it's, PWIs. I think it's being in the South. I think it's higher education in general. I think that's just the nature of where we are as a nation in 2021, and our last, not even going to go there. But all of those things, and I think they all are kind of impacting those environments and how we have to exist. And it's, I mean, Daryl, that's how our lived experiences are so different and so much harder than everyone else's. Like, when we show up to the race, we got to bring all our baggage with us, and then we have all these other obstacles. Y'all just get to show up, and it's paid for you. You can go straight to the finish line.
Let's do this. You're speaking to my spirit right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're speaking to my spirit right now. Let's do this, because I do want our listeners to have an understanding, or know, or to have some takeaways of how we can, I'll use the term combat this. Nope, I ain't gonna use the term combat, because then they're gonna think we out here trying to fight. So
yeah, we
let me
militant out here.
Yes, let me see. So I guess let's leave the people with ways on both sides, I guess, on a side that if you are experiencing this, ways that you can communicate to the people that are doing these types of things and exhibiting these behaviors. Like, how can you communicate that to them? And the people who are on the other side who may not know, like, what are some ways or things they can look for to maybe know or get an idea that they are exhibiting microaggressions, and they just, may just be accustomed to it and just don't know.
Yeah. So for those of us who experience microaggressions probably on a daily basis, I think that, first and foremost, we have to take care of ourselves, right? We have to engage in self-care. And so it is so easy to just get wrapped up in a job or an employment and give. I mean, I say it all the time. I give so much to this place, and there are times when I feel like I'm not getting anything back. And so when we're not getting something back from what we're putting in, we have to be able to give back to ourselves. And what our self-care looks like might be different from you to me to the next person. But also, I think it goes back to our conversation about your daughter in being comfortable in establishing boundaries. Being in a space where we can say, you know what, that's a hard limit for me. I need to either remove myself from that situation, or I need to take some time, kind of do some self-reflection, diffuse myself, and then come back and have a conversation, right? But establishing those boundaries, I think, even from a young age all the way through now, I think are important, because unfortunately, ignorance is very real, and people don't know what they don't know. So I can't sit over here and be mad that my homegirl April said something that kind of ticked me off, and I'm sitting over here just stewing in it, and April is going on about her business and doesn't know that I'm even upset, right? Like, at some point I have to get to the point where I can say, hey, April, I need to have this conversation with you. And if that means that that's like a conversation that you're having with a superior or something like that, then you need to be able to identify who your allies are. Who are the people that you can have these conversations with that can help steer these conversations, or be a neutral party, or be a third party, so that you can address those. And then, like conversations like this, there's strength in numbers. So I think for us, Daryl, we also have to establish and April, we have to establish our networks, right? And so, like April and I having conversations about what our lived experiences are, there are things that I'm learning from her, and there are things that she's learning from me, but also building that relationship and just having that place where I can show up and be myself, and someone's actively listening to me, but I know that that person's also going to be an ally. Or with Daryl, that person has the same lived experiences that I do, is powerful, because isolation is a very real microaggression, right? And it is hard to show up to work and feel like it is just you day in and day out, right? That is hard. And then on the other hand, for the people that are likely to commit microaggressions, put yourself in positions where you are around people that do not look like you, and learn them, learn their behaviors, learn more about them, and learn more about their lived experiences. That does not mean I'm just going to take Susie Q to lunch one time. That means I'm going to foster an actual relationship and get to know her and understand what her experiences are. Because 9 times out of 10, if I'm in a meeting with Susie Q, there's going to be something about her body language or her facial expression or her tone that's going to tell me something about what's going on is different from her than it is from me right now. I need to pay attention to that. And then for those of us who are leaders, specifically because racial microaggressions are often perpetuated by white people who don't understand the impact of their actions, right? So for those who are leaders, think about going the extra step and having equitable search committees, equitable and inclusive job descriptions, right? Search committees that represent the student body that exists at your institution. Pay equity and pay is so different, is a microaggression, because the difference in pay for white men and white women, and then black men and black women, is astounding right now. That is something that has existed for the last 50 or more years, right? So have equitable salaries, structure programs that reward all of the things that we are doing at your job. That may be things that are outside of the job description. April, you talked about being a mentor. So you might be mentoring someone. How does that look? Like, how do we build that into the job performance? How do we build that into our expectations and start having those types of conversations? If we're going to try to eliminate microaggressions, then we need to have equitable, inclusive job descriptions, right? Like, and we need to be able to measure that progress. And then let's stop just checking the box of, oh yeah, we're going to do this DEI training. We're going to do this multicultural awareness. Like, commit to it. Don't just have it one time so we can say, oh yeah, we think Black Lives Matter and we're going to check this box and now we're good. We're inclusive. We're good. We checked it. Actually consult with people and put your energy into it, right? But have conversations with and include people at the table who don't look like you. If you are a leader and your organization is majority white at the top, your practices are not going to reflect those that do not look like you. So you need to create a space for them to exist. So, I mean, those are I am no expert in that, but those are my thoughts on how we can at least start the conversation, right? I mean, we might have to do a part 2 to continue that, because I feel like we are striking some nerves here, Daryl, but that's my takeaway. I mean, it's insane that, you know, for every dollar a white man earns, the Black woman earns 62 to 65 cents on that dollar. I mean, we've got to, if we don't start addressing those structures like that, microaggressions, particularly racial microaggressions, are going to continue, and they're just going to foster and keep going, and they're just going to keep getting more creative as we get more creative with Zoom and virtual environments and everything like that. They're going to show up in different ways.
Ooh, but you just gave the business. I'm not going to follow it up. I'm just going to say you just gave the business. Thank y'all for coming to our workshop.
You can pay Kiama.
You know, oh my goodness.
Thanks for coming to our TED Talk.
Yes, you just dropped. I was just sitting here. I was just like, ooh, the business. I was just like, the business. Look, let's do this. How can the people find you? Like, if they want to reach out, if you want to be found, if they want to reach out to you and follow up, or you know, just connect with you, if you want to be found, how can they do that?
You can find me on Facebook. I'm Kiama Anthony Bishop, Kiama. And on IG, I am Ms. MIZZKEY 2, the number 2, you. And we'll drop that, I'm sure. But feel free to reach out to me on Facebook, on IG, or you can just shoot me an email. It's straightforward. It's Kiama.Anthony, my maiden name, @gmail.com. And we can chop it up.
Oh,
yay!
But this was good.
We
might have to bring you back for part 2.
I knew it. I told you.
I was like, I was just sitting here. I was just like, man, she is giving them the business. So we appreciate you.
We do.
Thank you.
I feel like you said something that can help a lot of people.
Yep.
On both sides. So I'm sure that our listeners are going to have a lot of takeaways. If you didn't get it the first time, just rewind it back and listen again.
You'll get it. Because
there are a lot of good takeaways and I think great recommendations in this episode. So
yeah.
You got anything else?
No, I can't follow that. That was so good. I do want to say I am so appreciative of you. And I know I was like, hey, we really want you to be a guest on the podcast. We think our audience is going to learn a lot. And Kiama's like, okay. I'm like, no, it's going to be great.
Coming here dropping dynamite.
Like, what? Oh my gosh.
I was nervous, you know, my girl reached out and I was like, listen, I don't know, y'all, you know, I've been listening and you got some experts out there. That's not really my thing, but I'm glad to have been here. I appreciate you guys thinking enough of me to invite me. I've enjoyed myself. I'm here for part 2 and however many parts we're going to go down, because I feel like in another life, Daryl and I are cousins, so we're gonna claim that.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're gonna keep it moving. But I mean, I appreciate it, and you know, I hope we gave the followers what they wanted and what they needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well.
All right. Until the next time.
We out.
Peace.
Bye.